Okay, I will say hello and welcome back to another episode of All About Balance. And today we are joined by Jesus. I won't list all of your accolades because we'll be here for God knows how long. But one of the best grapplers in the UK, one of the youngest black belts the UK's ever seen, and the self-titled Mr. Omoplata man himself, Bradley Hill. How's it going, my friend?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I thought you were going to stop at Jesus. Like I know the hair's growing, but
No, no,
I'm not. I'm not.
absolutely not. I think some of your performances have been godly, and we could probably start with the performance on Polaris being godly, right? Like, uh, I mean, yeah. Talk us through that. Talk us through that. How did that go?
Yeah, Polaris was good. I've got a nice 6-day training camp to prepare for it. They sent me a Facebook message asking if I was interested, and then I think it was between me and a couple of other people that were going to take the spot because I was a substitute for River Dillon. I
Yeah,
think River must have got injured. And then I just replied saying, of course, put me in. And then we're like, okay, we'll let you know in a few hours. And then from that point, I had to organize going up to Newcastle, do some training with my sister and Tyrone in
yeah,
222. And then went to Birmingham to train in Fearless with my wrestling coach and my friends there, Kyle and my cousin Laura. And then we went to Southampton, went all the way to Southampton for Polaris.
yeah, yeah. Like, man, I think that's something that even outside of lockdown, it's difficult to comprehend that even though you're in the UK and the shows are all based in England a lot of the time, the travel that a lot of guys put in order to get the training that they need is insane. Like, you've gone from one end of the country to the other in 6 days in order to appear
Yeah,
on Polaris to match up against some of the UK's best grapplers, and Freddie and Ross and these kind of guys. Like, it's insane, right?
yeah, it's crazy because there's so many people that travel long distances for training. Is it the sort of? I mean, London is one of its own because the travel time is disguised. Everyone thinks,
Yes.
oh well, your gym is next to you, but then it takes 60 minutes to get anywhere, depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah.
But then it's the same with like a lot of the guys that I trained with in Grace Bar and Nottingham. Nobody actually lived in Nottingham that trained there. They're like Ollie was from Barnsley and Sean was from Sheffield and Jamie was from Huddersfield. So everybody was traveling over an hour. But I think that's what makes that sort of room such high level is because people want to be there so badly that they're willing to travel for such a long time to get there. And then you have these people that are dedicated, and we train for so long over a period of time that then you become as good as you are. So I think it's to an extent required to sort of make those sacrifices.
I agree, and I think that it speaks to something of your own mentality. And I wondered if has it always been that way with you that you if you fall in love with something, then it doesn't matter what the sacrifice is, that it'll just come, like you'll just make it.
Yeah, pretty much. I have a very obsessive character. And I would say that it wasn't necessarily my sacrifices, but my mom's.
Yeah, yeah,
Because obviously I started training when I was like 9 years old.
yeah,
I started going to Birmingham at about 12 to train with Braulio. At 9, I was just training like a local martial arts school.
right,
They were teaching Jeet Kune Do. And then I learned like little glimpses of jiu-jitsu, and I met Braulio there on my first day. But we didn't do any proper jiu-jitsu in the gi until I was 12. And then I started training with Victor, and then I went to train in Birmingham with Braulio. But yeah, we used to drive to Acox Green, and then when it would be sort of like the fun times with like the 6 weeks holiday, and
yeah.
then I would get picked up on the middle of the Hagley Road and by one of the other purple belts, and I'm just hanging around on the street where my mum would just drop me off. So she's on her way to work. She drops me off on the street. I sit on the street for about 40 minutes because my friend was never punctual.
That's
And
jiu-jitsu
then we
time
would,
for you.
yeah. And then we'd go and train, and we just have a great day for the whole day. We do drills, then we do the class, then we do some more drills, eat a Subway, and then do another class on the evening. But that's the life. You're immersed by it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And something else that you're immersed by, if anyone's followed your social media, is you're an avid chess player, right?
Yes, I have recently. This was so one of my friends in Fight Zone. His name's Josh. Josh Northcote is the wrestling coach.
Yeah.
He was just saying to me like, oh, we should start playing chess because we were hanging out for the whole day. He just became an instructor full time, so we were hanging out the whole day and we were just sitting and drinking coffee. And then it's like, oh, well, maybe we should have a game of chess. Then he ends up buying a chessboard and we have a bit of fun. And then it's like, then you download the app, and then as soon as you download it, then you're just playing nonstop. And now
Yeah.
Samantha hates me because I'm just playing chess all the time.
Man, there's so many parallels, I think, to chess and jiu-jitsu, and I think there's a lot of life lessons that you can learn from chess, right? Like, what is it that you
Yeah.
get from chess? What do you enjoy?
I just like the mental battle of trying to close somebody in. Like I love a disguise check, so when I can move something out of the way and then you catch somebody off guard, and also anytime I can fork somebody with a queen and things like that.
Yeah,
It's those that really get me because when it happens to you, you're mind blown. Like literally yesterday, someone took my queen and I had no choice. I had to give it.
yeah, I hate
But
that.
it's sort of like the similarities with like an arm bar or the back take. It's like you have to give one or the other, and that's pretty much what you're looking for in jiu-jitsu. If you want to have dominant finishes and actually submit your opponent, instead of it being this sort of erratic jump on an arm bar and potentially lose it half the time or finish half the time, you have these calculated moves that ultimately come down to, okay, how do you want me to tap you?
Yeah,
Do you want to get choked or armbarred? And
yeah.
and then you go from that point.
This is probably a difficult question, but I'll ask it anyway. Like, what's your favorite piece in chess if you had to pick one?
Definitely my queen.
No, no, that's too easy an
I know,
answer.
I know. I'm one of those players, unfortunately. I mean, I do really like the knight, but I have
Yes,
not.
there it is.
I have
There it is.
yeah, yeah. I have not learned well enough to use it yet. At the moment, I'm just one of those like fool's mate kind of guys that just opens up and I'm like, wham, wham, and then starts putting you in check from like my third move.
Yeah, man, if it works, right? But I think that the knight is so versatile, and to use them in
Yeah,
tandem with their partner is just there's some phenomenal plays that you can make with those knights.
yeah,
But your point about jiu-jitsu, I think, is really valid as well, and that's that, you know, a lot of the time, especially when you're looking at high level grappling, a lot of people don't know what's happening, myself included, right? But what you do know is that there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of micro decisions that are happening in the 10-minute roll to get you to the position of either a finish or being finished, right? And
yeah,
and I think that, or even as something as small as a takedown or a guard pass or whatever it is, or a point score. And I think that that's something that, as you grow through the belt, as you grow through the ranks, it becomes more and more and more apparent, right?
yeah, for sure. Because then there's so much emphasis on the starting game, the beginning part of having the correct grips in the first place, and then breaking grips. I saw that there was a post from Flow Grappling the other day where I think it was Keenan that was analyzing some matches, and it was Homolo versus Leangelo, and he broke the grip like 20 times before he'd even decided to stand up to begin passing. Because the thing is if you decide to go, oh, I'm just going to go ahead anyway and start passing, you get thrown on your face and you're swept. So it really does have such an important role in breaking grips and that sort of the start of the game as opposed to the middle and the end.
Absolutely. And, obviously there you're talking about gi jiu-jitsu, and in Polaris you competed no gi. Is gi your preference? Would you be happy to go on record
Uh,
saying that?
it genuinely depends on the time of year.
Yeah.
So when I've been training for a world championship and I've got 2 weeks before the worlds, the only thing I want to do is take my gi off and just heel hook people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then when I've been like 3 months into no-gi training, like with an ADCC trials coming up, then all I want to do is stop somebody from slipping out of submissions and grab them and hold on to the collars. I really like the beauty of both of them and being able to compete in both. That's why, like, there's so many times where I've thought to myself, I should really just stick to sub-only jiu-jitsu. I could probably progress so much faster in terms of wins and hierarchy in terms of that sort of tournament.
Yeah.
Because I feel like gi jiu-jitsu, tournament style jiu-jitsu, is just on another level of difficulty for getting on the podium.
Yeah.
Super fights are one thing because it is just one match, and it's not necessarily based on winning or losing. It's also based on your performance.
Absolutely.
So if I go and have a match against a great guy, but we put on an absolute show, then the next one they're like, yeah, let's bring you on again, and it could be an even bigger name again, and then it just racks up from there. Whereas tournaments are brutal. Like the knockout style is pretty literal, where if you lose, you're out of it.
Yeah.
And that's the balance that you have to create between the two, and that's why I really like doing both of them.
How do you think, as somebody that has an obsessive personality, how do you prepare mentally to determine both scenarios, right? Because as you say, one is predominantly more brutal than the other in that it's extremely cutthroat. If you lose your first match in a tournament that you've trained 6 weeks for and you've flown out to LA or wherever, or you go home with nothing, right? But with a super fight, as you say, like, I know it's not a super fight per se, but if you take ADCC just gone, Canuto versus Tonin, who won that match? No one cares. No one cares who won that match, really. Because it was incredible, right? The showing was incredible. And I think both guys, their stock rose astronomically off the back of that. And you're right, if you go into a super fight in the UK against name X, whoever it is, and put on a great show, then it doesn't matter if you win or lose, really. You come out and your brand is larger and people want to see you. They want to see exciting matches. So I think that you're right. But yeah, sorry, how do you mentally prepare for that kind of situation?
I tried to, when I was sort of at purple and brown, I tried to just do everything and anything. And there'd be weeks where you do sort of 4 tournaments back to back every weekend. And then you realize that really sort of takes a toll on you, especially when there are different rule sets and different weight classes and all that sort of thing. That's where things get very difficult. So since becoming a black belt, I've just tried to be a little bit more intelligent on taking on which matches and also choosing which tournaments. And I've tried, or at least for this year, I was, before all of the pandemic came about, it was going to be very gi heavy from January to June. Because there are times where, like, I will have like Grapple Fest contact me, do you want to no-gi super fight against this name? And I'm like salivating at the mouth for a chance to fight this guy. But then I've only been training gi for the last 12 weeks because I'm also in the middle of preparing for a world championship. So that I then have to be very strict with myself and turn those down so I can say yes to the best performance I can give at a world championship. And it's just to really set on the goal. And then I always try to ask myself, is this going to help me in the long run? So will this help me progress in 3 years' time? As opposed to, if I get this win now, yes, maybe I get paid for the show and it's going to like build up my sort of confidence in terms of I get a win. But unless it's sort of going to impact my career over a long period of time, then it's not going to, I don't want it to affect the plan that I have in place. So it's very, like, I very much prepare for this period of time for a certain tournament, more than likely IBJJF rules, because now the difference with the UAE rules as well has come into fruition with sort of no gripping on the inside of the trousers by the pants, which is now making things a lot harder to train for both again. Because before, it's sort of the only difference is a 6-minute match between a 10-minute match. Now that they're changing up grip things, then again, it really makes it difficult for you to prepare for a UAE tournament if you're just constantly berimboloing and grabbing on the inside of the trousers, because now that's gone, right?
Yeah.
There's no more matrix or back take because you can't grip onto the trousers. Now it's very much a sweep heavy game. So everything changes, and the sort of the meta of each rule set is very different. So yeah, it is becoming increasingly difficult. And each time I say to myself, just do nogi. So yeah, I mean the ADCC trials just came up.
Yep,
So
Poland. Yep.
that is very surprising that there's even going to be a tournament this year at all. Especially, I don't know how many people are going to be allowed in and the capacity and all that sort of stuff. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think I can't really have too much of an opinion because I don't know the answer. But I think that if I know ADCC at all, they'll probably just let everyone in. It'll be an economic decision, and you'll get some incredibly tough Eastern European wrestlers that will turn up, and the people from Britain are gonna have to be on their best game. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, because then you've got to take into consideration that Poland have been opened up for training for a decent amount of time now. There are some places that didn't even stop training. I've literally had 4 months off before Polaris that had to put a 6-day camp together. Now I'm trying to do my best to get some training for this ADCC trials, but it's very difficult if you're from like somewhere like England where it's all locked up and there are restrictions set in place compared to if you're in Poland.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you allude to potentially what I'm thinking of, and that's the Adam Wozinski super camp that he puts on seemingly every day. And we've got a guy that trains at Fight City called Mateusz. Shout out to Mateusz. And he went home for the pandemic, and he went to Poland, and he's been training with Wozinski now for 6 weeks, you know. And he's like, yeah, these guys are training all of the time. Like, his cardio hasn't taken a back step, his game hasn't taken a back step. Like, everyone's exactly the same.
Yeah, if you didn't have bills to pay and rent to pay, then I'd be over to Poland in a second, I think.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with you. I think something that became prevalent during the lockdown is how necessary things like jiu-jitsu or just exercise in general, like mental and physical exercise, is. And you know, as somebody that's trained since they were 9, like, I imagine it felt the same for you, but for me specifically, it was just the understanding that my brain was confined to 4 walls and my body was confined to 4 walls. And of course you can lift weights and stuff, but it's just not the same as for my choice of outlet, which is jiu-jitsu, and that covers both the mental and the physical aspects for me. Did you find something similar?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's the first few weeks are just going crazy because even trying to like replicate it is just impossible. So like the solo drills, I've been running some solo drill Zoom classes.
Yep.
I was trying to do what I could at the beginning, and then it's just a bit futile. It's like people don't actually want to train that way either.
Yeah.
So it's almost like we maybe would have been better to take a 4-month break and just do something else, put your energy into like art or learning a language. I really feel like it is, to some aspect, it was a bit of a waste of time practicing my breakfall and technical stand-up for the past 3 months. So yeah, it's a difficult one because there really is no way of replicating jiu-jitsu, especially now that I've gone back and trained. So now I've had the taste of it again. Now, when my friends say to me, "Oh, do you want to do a solo session?" No.
Yeah, no.
I want to grapple another human being, and I wanted some contact. And I can't go back to kneeling on the floor and moving around like that. Like it's okay to sort of at the beginning when you're sort of, you don't know how long this is going to last. You're like, oh, I'll get myself keeping loose and keeping my flexibility up. But it's just nowhere near the same as actually grappling with people.
So what did you do in the last 4 months to keep yourself sane?
Well, This is a good question. We had some mats in the house for a very short period of time. And then obviously Samantha is my girlfriend. She works in the hospital.
Yeah.
So, and then they sort of called it D-Day. They went into full work mode of like 10-hour shifts, 4 days a week. So then Sam was coming back at like 6, 7 o'clock at night and pretty
Knackered.
much too tired to do anything, let alone train with me, especially considering I'm pretty big compared to her. So we'd get some bits in on the weekend, but it's mostly if she's having a time off, then she wants some time off,
Of
rather
course.
than having
Yeah.
to wrestle a bear in between going to the NHS every week. So yeah, I thought that we could get away with doing a bit of training, but my training hasn't been able to happen at all. So I mostly did a FaceTime solo session with Sam from GB Birmingham,
Yeah.
my friend from Wolverhampton. I did some movements with him. He sort of kept me sane and tried to keep me disciplined. But aside from, I've been doing a lot of Zoom classes with Melissa and Tyrone,
Yeah.
like trying to teach them as well, because obviously they're obviously living together, so they can train as normal. So I've just been teaching them, and their no-gi game has gone through the roof over the last 4 months.
Beautiful.
Yeah, taught them the dark arts. They're now heel hooking each other.
Excellent.
So it was nice for me to. That was I think if I didn't have Melissa and Tyrone to at least teach jiu-jitsu to, I would be in a mental asylum at this point.
Mate, I can only imagine. Like, I can only imagine. I mean, I do want to talk a little bit more about what happened in these 4 months outside of jiu-jitsu, but this does take me on to the question that one of the burning questions I have, and that comes from one of the listeners, John Fleming, and he basically wanted to find out from high-level coaches what your coaching mentalities were, what your philosophies were for coaching. And obviously now you've spoken a little bit about teaching your sister and Tyrone, but could you speak a little bit on what your philosophy of coaching is and how you like to coach?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I just like people to have fun. Because the thing is if you're not enjoying the martial art, then you're not going to stay training. And that's your key to improvement, is just doing it for a very long period of time. There is no, jiu-jitsu will teach you that there is no shortcut. And I think in a society that we're in today, there's a lot of seeking shortcuts and the easy ways to do things. And jiu-jitsu really is one of those things that teaches you a bit of deferred gratification. And if you train hard for 5 days a week for 3 years, eventually you'll be able to beat people, but you'll still be getting beat by other people, which is the classic hammer and the nail. But if you don't enjoy it, then there's no way that you'll stay training. This is one of, because I started teaching kids jiu-jitsu from like being 16, so from a very young age. And the key there again is to just make it as fun as possible for the kids. And there's a lot of the parents that talk to me about discipline and why aren't they sparring more, or why aren't they learning more techniques, and they shouldn't be playing games. But if the game is teaching them jiu-jitsu and we make it as fun as possible, then, and they sort of take on jiu-jitsu as this fun idea, then they're more likely to stay trained, and eventually they'll learn when there's an actual want to learn more and really go down the path. And that's why, like, I had a juvenile student called Cameron Jeter, who was like an absolute phenom at the time. Now he's gone in to teach himself. He's a brown belt at like the age of 19. Probably going to take over from me as like the youngest black belt in the country. But again, with him, I think there's a lot of people, if you put too much emphasis on the competition and the success and winning, that the juveniles themselves have a real difficulty with.
Yeah.
Because they've gone from being yellow belts, orange belts, green belts that are winning everything and winning with like flying triangles or triangle chokes in 30 seconds. And the parents are telling them you're the best, and the coach are telling them you're the best. And then they get the blue belt. And then it's like, okay, now go to the Europeans or go to a world championship against the other best kids in the world from America and from the other parts of Europe and from Brazil. And now you're no longer the best. You're in a group of the best, and you're part of this all-star division, that it's now really tough when you take a loss. And I think that was one of the things for me, sort of talking about my jiu-jitsu journey for a second. The reason I'm in the position I am now is because I didn't stop training. There are a lot of juveniles that were training, that were competing alongside me. We were all on the same circuit with, and I was getting bust up. I was losing Europeans at blue belt, getting beat at purple. But then I would continue training, and by the time brown belt came, I'd either have a rematch with them and win, or they'd stop training because they either fallen out of love with jiu-jitsu or what. So it really is just down to time. So I try to make the jiu-jitsu as fun as possible in the classes, and also give people an avenue to some nice jiu-jitsu, some beautiful looking techniques at the same time, because I think that's important. I think there's a lot of emphasis on fundamentals and basics, and there's another question as to what is basic these days when you have white belts at the art of jiu-jitsu that are doing berimbolos. But at the same time, you have to make things enjoyable. So if that means showing them a little nice back take every now and again to keep people enticed and like, oh, well, I'm going to try that in my sparring, just to keep people going and enjoying jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant. Like, I really do think that's brilliant, because I think there's, you can go, look, there's extremes of everything, right? You can go and you can only show people flashy jiu-jitsu and beautiful jiu-jitsu, and then when you ask them to do a hip bump sweep, they don't know what you're talking about. And then in the same vein, you could teach them to do the perfect hip bump sweep, and all they know is a hip bump sweep, and you ask them to show just the basics of a berimbolo, and they don't know what the word means, right? And I think that what you say there is a beautiful balance between, you're right that it's supposed to be fun, right? Like when you went back to training for your illustrious 6-day camp for Polaris, what hit you, I imagine, is the same thing that hit me when I started training. It's like, oh my God, this is so fun. Like, this is so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
if
it's just nice to grapple again.
Yeah. And if you can relate that into your teaching style, not just for kids as well, but for adults. I mean, my partner's been to your classes. She trains at Fight Zone, and what she comes back with is that, it's just an abundance of fun, right? Like, it's an abundance of fun. And I mean, what more can you ask for, really? You've got, obviously there's high level technique being shown, and personally, I saw you coach Melissa at London Warriors, and just extremely high level coaching, extremely high level detail. And what was really crazy is Melissa was essentially a robot, and you were playing a game. Like, you took hold of the controller that was Melissa and played the game. And that, to have that kind of trust in a coach, to have that kind of trust in the words that somebody's saying and the techniques that somebody's asking you to perform, just goes to show, I think, the ability of a coach, right?
It's funny you bring up that metaphor. That's how I describe it myself, because it's the same with Cameron or Laura or Melissa or Samantha, anyone that I coach. And the thing is my coaching, I try to look at it as sort of teaching and coaching as two separate things. I coach very few people that are like close to me, and I teach a lot of people. And when my students that I'm teaching get to the point that they want to test themselves in competition, they want to sort of be under the wing, that's when the more training comes in, and the sort of the settings for the robots sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I there's an element of sort of the robotics of me having the controls, because I also know that if there's a part of me believing in them so much that they can believe in me and say do what I tell them to do at the right times. Because if I can think for you in some instances, you have a black belt mind for a second, and you really are going to make the right choices every now and again. But then there are times where that goes completely against people. So like with Samantha, for instance, I'll be saying something and she doesn't quite know what it is. She'll be talking to me in the fight, and she's like, say something else. Because she doesn't know, or she doesn't quite understand how to leg drag from that situation. So then I have to speak to her afterwards and say, sort of, stay in the fight. and take yourself as your primary decision making process.
Yes.
And if there's any help that you need, then you can look out to me or listen to what I'm saying and take that on board. But don't listen to what I'm saying as absolute. It's not the only thing that you can do from there. There are so many possibilities in jiu-jitsu, and there are always going to be different things that people do better than what I do or do differently from what I do. Melissa is like 10 times more flexible than I am. So she's going to have a very different game that is based around flexibility and things. At the moment, it's still omoplatas and very
Beautiful.
much my game of jiu-jitsu. The same with Laura. Laura is just a spitting image of me. And now she's a black belt European champion, and it's awesome. But
Shout
yeah,
out to Laura Barker.
yeah, there are some people that really follow instructions well, and there are other people that need to be able to just go with it themselves and have their own take on their fights. And yeah, I think the biggest thing that I can instill in people is belief and confidence over the sort of the coaching and the very specific things of sort of right hand here, left grip there, is before all of that comes into play, and before they can sort of give themselves over this autonomous feeling, I first have to make sure that they're confident enough to win the tournament and to trust in me themselves. I think that's the biggest thing the coach can do, is really just give that sort of sense of what's the word, when you tell people that they're doing good. The compliments and things. Yeah, encouragement, praise. Give that during the classes and during the training, but again, not being overly over the top with it, because then they don't respect your praise anymore. So you have to be sort of withholding it to a certain extent. And then it's also the idea of encouraging them to sign up for these tournaments and making them believe that, like when Melissa's going to fight the ADCC trials, and the first thing she's saying to me is, but won't there be brown belts and black belts there? I'm like, yeah, of course. I said, you can beat black belts. I said, people are doing it already. The lines are so blurred between belt levels these days, especially for no-gi.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, but what about this person? I said, well, the thing is if you use the right techniques against that person, you're going to beat them, regardless of what that person's name is or what achievements they already have. If there's a chink in their armor and you go ahead and stab in that area, you're going to get the victory, right? So it's just a matter of finding out what their weaknesses are, and then setting your game up around that style. So I would say, like in women's jiu-jitsu, there's very little leg locks used in terms of proficient heel hooking. There's a lot of toe holds, there's a lot of knee bars, but there's not a very good understanding of leg entanglements and heel hooks. Apart from like a few people like Elvira Carpenter is excellent at them. We just saw Elizabeth Clay heel hook Louisa Montero, which again is one of those eye-opening things for a coach to be like, okay, there is a very clear way for a brown belt to defeat a black belt world champion, and that is the chink in the armor, which is the leg lock game. And I think eventually that will all sort of level up, just like it has with the men's.
Of course, yep.
Now I think the next step will be sort of wrestling, and we'll all have to be much better with your takedowns. But yeah, I think the women's side of things are just delayed slightly, and I think that's potentially the next best thing.
Yeah, I mean, and that some of that was absolute gold, right? Some of that was absolute gold. And I think you make a couple of really interesting points. And the first is that at the end of the day, like if it's Melissa or if it's Samantha or if it's anyone on that mat, it's them that's on the mat, not yourself. And you're right to say that it's them that's in the fight. And sometimes they may see something that you don't see, or vice versa. And having that relationship is just so valuable. I mean, I've only ever really seen two instances of that. One is in MMA with a coach called Trevor Whitman and his fighters, Rose Namajunas and Justin Gaethje. Like he says something, they do it. And it's because they just know that that's there. And then sometimes he'll say something and they don't do it, and he'll respect that decision also. And the other one was actually on Pantheon, and it was Liam Khan and his fighter Adam Butterworth. Like Liam was just, he hadn't able to finish the sentence that he was making, and Adam knew what he wanted him to do and just did it, and it was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal to see that kind of synergy.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful. And to your point also, I think it's really interesting that you make a delineation between a teacher and a coach, because I think that's something that a lot of people aren't able to make, but is so vastly important. You know, you can have a teacher in the gym that will teach you phenomenal techniques and can break down things beautifully, but you put them in a corner situation or a coaching situation, and the same level of standard, it just isn't available, or you aren't able to put a different hat on, and instead you're teaching and you're not coaching. And I think that's something that's really brilliant that I've seen you able to do in the very, you know, like from the outside especially.
Yeah, like you say, there's a huge difference with it, because, for instance, like obviously I've learned under Braulio for years, and Braulio is an excellent teacher, but I haven't necessarily had many coaches come with me to tournaments or be there at the time when I'm fighting. Like for the first part of my jiu-jitsu competitions was my mom, and it was pretty much like, go Bradley. There wasn't any technique there. So from a very early age, I learned to sort of trust my own instincts and try to make the decisions myself, because then I would have other coaches like that would call out things to me. And this is one of the mistakes that I made when I was competing at blue belt. I got triangled by a kid, and at the time I was pretty decent at defending triangles, just sort of staying on my knees, finding my way out eventually. Didn't have much technique, but I would just sort of grit my teeth and eventually find a way out. And then one of my coaches came up to me and said, Bradley, stand up and throw your legs over the body. I was like, what? So he's like, stand up. So I stand up with the kid. He's like, throw your legs over now. I went to throw my leg over. I fell, get mounted, triangled, and then tapped. I was like, okay, maybe I won't listen to any advice that I haven't practiced in the gym before. So that's the first thing. And then I learned through experience. So the more I compete and the more I feel different coaches, the more I can take from each one that I've had. But because I've not had one sole coach over the 12 years, 15, 13 years of competing, I can really pick and choose for certain things. Like during my brown belt run, I had Neil Simkin coaching me loads. He's he runs Great Sparrow Warsaw, an excellent coach. And he's a very intense guy, very much like this technique. But what I really got from him was the level of intensity. So beforehand, he would get me sort of psyched up and ready to compete, because I always struggled at blue and purple of trying to find this balance between being too relaxed and being too pent up.
Yeah.
And it was always too relaxed for me. I was the guy that was sort of like sauntering in, like I just woken up, and then I would switch on 2 minutes into a fight when I wake up and like, oh God, somebody's trying to grapple me, and I've probably been took down and I'm losing by 2 points, and then I can find a submission or a sweep to win the match. And then when it comes to the big tournaments, that was how I was losing. I get 2 points and I couldn't sweep back, and I wasn't awake from the start of the fight. And that's what Neil really instilled in me, is this sort of aggression from the start. Mm-hmm. So, but then that only lasts so long as well, because there's only so long you can try to be angry and really force yourself into a state. So then at black belt, again, it sort of flicked between different people coaching at certain tournaments, but mostly just me or Samantha, and then Sam giving me some advice, or me and Laura just cheering. But really, at this point, there's no real advice that's given to me. It's very much just me fighting on my own. And then that's when you really find out your best state to be in. Because for me, I don't want to be in any state that's forced. Like I competed at like the British Nationals, and on my way to the British Nationals, I was like I was listening to like some heavy rock. I was like, come on, man, let's get pumped up. You're going to fight today. And then I was like, man, this just isn't working. I'm sat on the overground on my way to Crystal Palace. I turned my headphones off. I fell asleep. I got into the venue. I put my gi on, walked into the warm area, shot into a guard pull. I'm up after the guy and tapped him. I was like, wow, that's cool. I went to sign my name up for the absolute. I fell asleep in the warm-up area. I did some little movement exercises before I needed to go back into the bullpen. Won all 3 matches, double gold at the tournament. And I think it really makes a difference between just accepting how you feel and not necessarily trying to force yourself into any one scenario. Because then I learned that in other tournaments. Because then I go to other tournaments, I'm like, man, just go to sleep and wake up and see how you feel. But then you need the aggression sometimes. So it really is finding the correct state for each competition. But there is no one state that will rule all of them. If you know what I mean.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, does it affect you to have to do things on your own? Does it affect you that you don't have coaches in your corner necessarily, like you coach others?
No, for me, it's a lot better. The less people around me, the better, because I'm a very antisocial person when it comes to competition. So when I have sort of Sam, Melissa, or Laura around me, I instantly want to make sure they're feeling comfortable. And I'm like, hey, are you all right, guys? You need anything? Should we get warmed up? And I'm immediately thinking about other people instead of focusing what I need to do that day. So for me, it works so much better if I just go to a tournament alone and just literally fall asleep and just be a right loner in the corner until I'm ready to fight. Because that's one of the things that I've struggled with as a coach and a competitor at the same time, is you put so much energy into other people that by the
Yeah.
time it's time for me to compete, it's like you've let all the air out of the balloon.
Yeah.
So I've had to. These are things that I've been working on over the last few years, just sort of developing the coaching, but then also trying to give myself enough time to be the competitor that I can be as well.
And do you have a preference between being a competitor or being a coach, or a teacher?
Ooh, this is a very difficult question, because the thing is nothing can beat the feeling of winning as a competitor, especially something dominating when you submit somebody, and then the feeling for the whole day. It's literally like you're walking like 6 feet off the ground, because you fought the way you wanted to, and then everything else just falls into place. But then on the same hand, when I'm coaching, like for instance, Laura winning her European title this year, or Samantha winning world championships before, it is just such a good feeling to know that you've prepared that person, you've trained with them leading up to the competitions, I've told them what drills to do, and they've looked at me like, I don't want to do this, like, can we not finish now? And I'm like, come on guys, just finish it off, and then we can call it quits. And they push through, and they put in the work, and then we get to the tournament, and then there's all these different things that go on throughout the tournament, be it making weight, be it the emotion. And there always seems to be so much more emotion when I'm coaching women. I don't know why I have so many women that I coach, but it's all women that I seem to be coaching. So there's so much more emotion that's involved there, and trying to understand how to contain that and when to let it out and all those sort of things. So yeah, the coaching is much more rewarding because it's nice to see how people do, but the ego inside me really enjoys the winning on the day.
Yeah, I can understand that entirely, and I think you've touched on so many things that are almost philosophical in their nature, in that you've talked about ego and balance and all that kind of thing. And does that sort of philosophical thinking come solely from jiu-jitsu, or is that something that you have garnered outside of jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, that's pretty much outside. So I think jiu-jitsu teaches you that the more you train it. So obviously, especially like I said with Braulio, he's very good teacher, and he really gives some excellent sort of analogies on things. And that's when you start to create the similarities in your own mind for other analogies. But when I first sort of got into understanding about sort of a state of mind and all this sort of stuff was through a mindset coach. So I was working with a guy called Tom Foxley, who's in Canada at the moment. He runs a program called Mindset RX. and they do some excellent work. And I worked with him before the British Nationals, and just going through different mindset practice, journaling and visualization and all these different things. And it makes a huge impact when you talk with somebody and you have somebody that can actually tell you, or not. The thing is, that's the best part with the sort of mindset coach, is they never tell you what to do. It's they listen to you, and then by the end of your time talking, the end of the conversation, you've already come up with a solution. And that is the thing in itself. So yeah, all of the sort of mindset and trying to figure out where I am as a competitor has come through the mindset coaching.
And I mean, to me, that almost sounds similar to something like therapy, right? Where
Yeah.
you sit with another human that has some tools that you don't necessarily have at that time. You lay out a problem in front of them, and they will guide you in a way that is almost subconscious for you to reach a solution that you determine to be your own thought pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry. Go on.
No, it is crazy, because it's one of those things that you won't necessarily learn through the martial arts. Sometimes you have to go outside of the box to try to learn these things. Because I was struggling for a very long time because I would have these inconsistent performances. There'd be some tournaments and I'd go win double gold and submit everybody, and I felt like an absolute animal. And then there are other tournaments where I just didn't feel like competing that day. And I'd pull guard, and the guy would get to a good position, and like these 10 minutes would run by, and I'm looking up at the ceiling, and I'm just not in the fight at all. By no means awake at that moment. And I really struggled trying to understand the balance. And it was very much like a potluck. Like, today I'm going to be great, or I'm going to lose first round. And I don't know what's going to happen. And that's when I started seeking some advice, because again, I think with martial arts, especially jiu-jitsu being so male dominated, it's very much just be aggressive, bro. Just go in and fight. And it's you're not going to get the advice that you need, or the things that you need, unless you seek outside of martial arts and you go and speak to other people and you find out different things, and then you bring it back to jiu-jitsu.
I mean, do you think that that's synonymous of just life in general? You touched earlier on society looking for shortcuts, right? Or society looking for things for short-term gratification rather than from deferred or long-term gratification. What do you see as the route that society is going at the moment? What do you see that short-term gratification leading to?
Well, I think it leads to a lot of lazy people. There are a lot of work that people don't necessarily take as much pride in their work anymore. And
Yeah.
I'm not old by any means to be saying like, oh, back in the day. But what I'm saying is that
A ripe age
there's a
of
lot of
25.
yeah, there are a lot of things that when I hear my parents speak, or my granddad speak, where people take a lot of pride in their work, and when something is made, it is made to last, because it's a representation of yourself, right? Anything that I like, if I'm teaching jiu-jitsu, then I want to put in my best effort for every single person in the room, because they're all a representation of who I am and my teachings. So the same thing with any other business or company, but I feel like there's a lot of people that are looking for these shortcut ways of how to make money, how to get up in status, as opposed to just working hard and getting there. I've always been sort of a believer in hard work and dedication. But it's like you see I was just on TikTok the other day, and it's 5 ways to make money. And it's one outsourced to Asian countries. And it's like, what? How could you advise someone to take on a writing role and then outsource that writing role to another person? So you don't have to do anything at all except for collect a check. And that's the part that I don't understand.
I mean, where do you think it comes from? Like, this is obviously an evolution that's happened over time, right? Over these
Yeah.
25 years of you being on the earth.
Yeah. I don't know. I think to some extent it is people's what they're taught. I think everything is sort of softened a lot of the teaching styles and things for people in schools. I think the reason I believe what I have is because I've been in the martial arts for such a long time, and jiu-jitsu isn't one that necessarily teaches you about discipline and all these attributes that come with traditional martial arts, like a karate instructor, say, would show you. But that's where what I learned from Jeet Kune Do, where it's very much sort of like sitting in horse stance for 5 minutes and your legs are burning and you can't stop. And it's those sort of things that you learn over time. And I think if more people trained martial arts, we would have a much better society. I think if people did something that was hard instead of just doing the easy things all the time, I think it would make people just understand a little bit better and be a little bit more grateful for everything they do have. But yeah, who knows? I am only 25.
I mean, I think your point though, where your point becomes complex is hard is a variable. Hard as an adjective is a variable, because what's hard for you, Bradley Hill, 25, youngest black belt in the UK, may not be hard for somebody else, but could be unbelievably hard for somebody else, right? Like the levels at which difficulty arise are varying. In the same vein, you know, I don't want to use jiu-jitsu as an example, but I will. It's like, okay, if you showed a day one white belt at Berimbolo, a day one white belt that doesn't even know how to tie their belt, right? I mean, not many jiu-jitsu people know how to tie their belt, me included, but if you showed a day one white belt at Berimbolo, that's easy for you. You've done it 1,000 times, hundreds of thousands of times. That day one white belt would get 98% of it wrong. It's hard for them, right? So in the same vein, you know, it's difficult to define what is hard and what's not hard. I think, excuse me, sorry. I think I agree with your point though. Your point is that humanity and society should challenge themselves within a means at which they don't feel like they can grasp. So for instance, if your challenge is to win ADCC, right? That's hard. Like for anyone that's grappled, anyone that's decent, you know how hard it is to get something off against anyone that's, you know, just a decent gym warrior. And then you're going to the biggest no-gi stage in the world, arguably, and you're looking to dominate everyone in a very difficult rule set. Like that's hard. And that's hard to you. But to somebody that's just starting, what's hard is getting to where you are as a black belt in X amount of years. But I think how we instill that, I agree, it has to come from parenting, it has to come from schooling. And I also agree that engaging in something like martial arts, because I agree that a lot of the jiu-jitsu culture that came over from Brazil and was instilled by the Brazilian coaches that are, you know, that are prominent in the UK and in America and in Europe is jiu-jitsu is kind of a social martial art in comparison to old school traditional karate, Jeet Kune Do, kickboxing, you know, the things that a lot of the UK guys were brought up in. But the rolling is where you find the discipline, for me especially, because you can't hide and you're either going to lose or you're not. And you know, it dependent on what your coach defines to be losing. Like some coaches will or teachers, I think I should probably use that definition, especially in this episode, is that you know, not many people that do sub only no-gi stuff care about points. If they could go around and they could have lost 45-0, but they don't get tapped, so it's not a loss. Whereas if you're coming from a competition perspective of IBJJF, a guard pass is a loss, a takedown is a loss, an advantage is a loss, right? So you're obsessing over the micro battles, and those micro battles are where you learn the discipline. It's where you learn the challenge. It's where you're taught to you know, go home training sulking because somebody managed to score an advantage. So I think that teachings and having some defined challenges are really important. But I think that you're right that it's difficult to find the source of where those challenges come from outside of parenting and schooling.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with challenging. As long as you can find something that's challenging, something that's outside the box, regardless of what that might be or relevant to who you are, I think that's the sort of way to go for really challenging yourself as a human being. I think, like you say, it's difficult because, say, like in America, there's a lot of kids that go through freestyle wrestling. It's
Yes.
very difficult. That's tough on you physically and mentally, and they are to some people the toughest sort of martial artists that go around. Right, that's the sort of the backbone of what you would want in an ideal MMA fighter,
Yeah.
because they are just so tough. But then you still see issues in that arise in America as well. And I'm not saying obviously not everyone's training wrestling, but you I don't know. It's not necessarily a perfect society. But then you look over in like Tokyo, and I went to Japan, and everyone is unbelievably polite. And maybe it's just that, I don't know. Maybe the society needs to be more courteous to other people. I'm not quite sure. Like over there, people are putting masks on when they feel like they've got a little bit of a cold because they don't want to infect other people.
Yeah.
Whereas then you have people that argue, well, you're taking my rights if I put a mask on. There's, I don't know. I think there's a few different things of different societies that we could all take a little snippet out of. But all we can do is try to be the best us, right? And as
Yeah.
long as we're doing that and we're impacting on the people that we're a part of and that are inside our circles, then that's pretty much all you can do. And then you hope that it impacts on circles and circles and circles until you have the mass majority are good people. But who knows?
Yeah, I mean, the first point I want to ask is rather a stupid question, and that's how's fucking Tokyo? Like, that was
Mm,
a blast, surely.
mate, that was one of my favorite places I've ever been. It's like stepping into a Nintendo game.
Yeah.
That's like the closest similarity that I can draw. But it really is. It's a completely different culture. And I was very fussy with my food for a very long time until I
Oh
met
man.
Samantha. I was very much. If someone's like, "Oh, do you want to try this?" I don't like that. So we tried it. But over there, I was eating oysters. I was eating. There was like whale on a stick. There was everything. Unbelievable. And there's seafood every day. It's like you can't get away
Sushi.
from fish. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, the sushi. It must have been amazing.
It was pretty immense.
Yeah,
One
and
of my favorite trips. Just like I say, the entire culture. Everyone's super polite. Everything is like there's all one-way systems. People are walking, and nobody barges into anybody. They just walk in the correct manner. So it's very interesting how they live.
yeah, my second question goes back to when you said essentially what you're looking for is evolution via generational growth, right? Like levels of separation. Like if you adopt a quote unquote good, because like essentially good is a variable as well, right? What's good in our society is not good in Japan, is not good in China, is not good in the US potentially, is not good in the sub-Sahara desert and whatever. Like good is a variable. A lot of these things are variables, but you know, what is good to you? Like what is a good person?
Oh, wow. Um, Someone of good morals. I think that just all I look for in a person is some character. And I know that it's not going to be a perfect person because everybody has a little bit of a rascal inside them as well. So, and the thing is if somebody hasn't got that element of uh, a little bit of rascality, then they're also
That's a
uh,
phenomenal word.
then they're also going to be completely boring to be around. So you do need the people that are going to challenge what is acceptable as well, because you need that bit of excitement every now and again too. But as long as there's a respectable character in somebody, whether they're disciplined in what they do or whether they're very courteous and polite, there's a few different things, but really, as long as, for me, the people that I really struggle to be around are sort of people that don't have any manners, that are rude, and people that are sort of facetious, talking behind your back and things like that. Those are the parts where I struggle, where it's sort of snake-like tendencies. But as long as you're showing good human character, I'm pretty happy with all sorts of people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to delve into an hour-long discussion on what good means and what, you know, what manners means, because we would be here forever. But I think that I mean, essentially what you've said, from the little that I know of you, on a personal level, like, it seems like what you've just relayed is how you portray yourself, right?
Mm.
You know, somebody that has good manners, that has a little bit of rascality. That's my word of the day, by the way. That's my word of the day. A little bit of rascality, a little bit of character that may not be determined to be perfect in some societies, but also somebody that is straightforward enough that, you know, if there's a problem, you'll address it. If there's not, you won't, right? And somebody that you know, what's abundantly clear, and what's actually been abundantly clear from me talking to lots of high-level athletes, from Rob Drysdale, yourself, Ash Williams, Ross Nichols, these kinds of guys, is that they are extremely simple in a lot of ways, but extremely complex in other ways. You know, where it's simple is, for instance, with you and Ash, it's like, I have this goal, I'm going to go and get that goal, whether it be to be the best coach in the world or to go and win ADCC or whatever it is. Like, very goal orientated, very deterministic people is like, I want to be here, I'm going to put the work in to get to here, because then I can get here, right? And for the audio listeners, I'm doing various movements with my hand. Just watch the YouTube, it will be fine. But on the other side, there's these complex notions of the understanding of what it took to get to the level you are now, and all of the nuance at which it takes to get to the next level. You know, like there's lots of talk in boxing and MMA where it's like, it's easy to get to the top 5, but to close the gap from the top 5 to the top 1 is inextricably difficult. And it's probably the same in jiu-jitsu, right? Like, to get to, I don't know, like a Josh Hinger, Keenan, these kinds of levels is achievable. But to close the gap from those guys to Gordon, or those guys to Hodger, or those guys to Braulio back in the day, is so difficult, right? Those guys to Marcelo, like, you know, it's just that's the other level, right? And I think that the complexity that adorns is something that you take in the way that you speak about philosophy, the way that you speak about culture, the way you speak about society, and what you determine to be good and bad in society. And I think that is something that, you know, as you speak about balance, and, you know, you speak about being good, but also being a bit of a rascal. Like everything has to be in balance. There has to be both worlds. There has to be the good in order to appreciate the bad, and likewise, right?
Yeah, for sure. If you didn't have one, then how could you appreciate the other?
Or how could you even know the definition of the other, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, you wouldn't know what a good Mikey Musumeci Berimbolo is if you didn't see one that I've done, right? It just wouldn't exist. Do you know what I mean? Like, and
that's an excellent example.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, talking about goals, like, outside of pandemic, obviously, what are Bradley Hill's goals for 2021 to 2025?
2021 is a gym, brother. The thing for me, I've been wanting to teach and own my own school for such a long time. I remember when I was training in martial arts concepts, the small local gym in Hales Owen, where I used to live, and then I would be teaching and be sort of an assistant coach there as one of the kids, and they would talk to me about, oh, well, do you want to open a gym like when you're old enough? And I would always just be smiling from ear to ear, because that was all I wanted. Like, originally my dreams were like to be in the UFC and to own a gym. And then I learned jiu-jitsu, and I met Victor Estima and his cool afro hair. And I was like, wow, Brazilian jiu-jitsu is where it's at. but it's always been, I've always enjoyed teaching.
Same.
Yeah, I've just wanted somewhere for me to teach for like such a long time. So I think next year, especially once this pandemic is over, just
Yeah.
somewhere where I can teach consistently and students that I can call my own and just really help people as best I can. I'd love to start teaching kids again. I've not taught kids for like 2 years, so it breaks my heart. But it'd
Yeah.
be nice to teach kids and adults and take a team to a competition and all that sort of stuff. So that's the next one. Aside from competitive goals of trying to get to win the ADCC trials and get to the Olympics of grappling,
Yeah.
the gym is the next step.
And is that going to be in the UK, or are you going to go abroad with that?
No, here in the UK. Yeah, more than likely London.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Well, breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. There's a new fucking high level gym coming to London.
Yeah, because for me, I always struggled with the idea of London, thinking that it's like already so saturated and there are already so many good instructors. But the thing, and like you say, good is a variable, right?
Good as a fucking variable, my friend.
I honestly, I honestly think there aren't many schools in Europe or the world that can offer what I can and what Samantha can, because I don't know many gyms that have black belt, male and female, like high level instructors. So I think that is going to be one of the biggest things of sort of our selling points to get people into the gym. Is not only can you learn good jiu-jitsu, you're going to learn it from good people, but also have a male and female role model, which the first female black belt I saw was like Kira Gracie at a seminar, and I was like, oh my God. Do you know what I mean? Like, imagine what my sister would feel or what Laura would feel like when she was a blue belt first starting training with me again. So I think I think we have a good thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, because like you say, look, if you're just looking at jiu-jitsu as a martial art, then London is saturated. You're right. There's lots of really good gyms. There's lots of good competitors coming out of London. But jiu-jitsu is not just about jiu-jitsu. Like, if you know, like kickboxing, if you want to learn kickboxing, you could go and find a kickboxing school in probably every suburb in London, right? But not many of them produce world champions, and not many of them are run by, quote unquote, good people that you can gel with, people you can connect with. And at the end of the day, like, what happens in jiu-jitsu schools is that communities are built and mini societies are built. And you know, at the top, at the pinnacle, at the pillar of that gym is the coach or the instructor or the teacher, or however you want to determine it. You know, if we're harking back to old days, we'd have to call you Professor Hill, right? And you know, like, you know, I agree that there is something that you can offer. I agree, you know, I've never been to one of your classes, but I've heard enough from enough people about your classes. You know, my partner's been to Sam's Womanage. She went to Amsterdam and all this sort of stuff. Like, there's absolutely something that both of you have that needs to be capitalized on. And I don't mean capitalized on from an economic perspective, although obviously, like, you know, that's a big part of it as well. But something that you know, people forget you're only 25. Just because you look like Jesus, they think you're older, right? But you know, you're only 25, and there's so much that you have to offer yourself and to the community of jiu-jitsu through coaching and through your own gym. And I think that, you know, I mean, I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited for you.
Yeah, me too. I think one of the biggest things is, regardless of sort of tournaments, I think what would be really nice is just seeing the impact of the students themselves. That was one of the biggest things that I enjoyed in teaching the kids, is the character building that you have through martial arts. And you have a kid that comes in that barely wants to step foot on the mat, and then after 3 months, he's like throwing people and absolutely loving life. And then you see the whole confidence change, because there's such a shy person looking down at the floor when you first engage, and they don't even want to look at you, let alone come in and shake hands, say, hi, Bradley, how's it going? oh, I did this at school. It's like they just come in and everything completely changes. But you get the same thing with the adults as well. There are so many people that come out of the shell once you treat them like another person, and you have this place for them to feel comfortable in. That's like, I just want like the first gym that I was training was really a family orientated gym, and that's what the biggest part to martial arts is, really just finding your second family. So as long as I can provide that somewhere in London, then I'll be happy.
I mean, yeah, like, you know, what the way that it came across to me when you were describing, you know, your essentially your selling points and your business model, it's like a pseudo mom and dad with you and Sam,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's, you know, it's like a pseudo mom and dad that can beat the shit out of you if you do something wrong. And, you
Yeah,
know,
pretty
I
much.
think what's really interesting as well about what you say about having somewhere to be comfortable is it's like comfortable, kind of comfortable until you slap hands and someone's trying to choke you to sleep, right? Like
Yeah,
semi-comfortable. But I think there's something that's so, you know, like harking back to Fight Club, the film Fight Club, is
yeah.
those men and those females that turned up to those scraps. There was an element of freedom to the combat, to the conflict, and I think that that's something that's prevalent in jiu-jitsu as well, is that there is something freeing to be able to exercise conflict, exercise combat, but at the end of it, you don't hate that person. If anything, you've
Mm.
grown closer to that person. And the fight that we saw just a couple of weeks ago with Jorge Masvidal and Kamaru Usman, like before, they were talking about not being able to be in the same room as each other, and they were really, you know, they were aggressive to each other, and they saw each other outside of the sort of the UFC banner, and they were, you know, chomping, and they weren't having to be held back by security and all this kind of stuff, where there seemed to be like a legitimate dislike between the two men, right? And
Yeah.
then they shared 25 minutes together in a cage, throwing bones at each other until someone fell over. Nobody did fall over, but at the end of it, both men were completely respectful of each other, and, you know, they said kind words to each other, and they wished each other well, and all these kind of stuff. And there's something to that, right? Now of course you don't want kids throwing bones at each other until someone falls over, but you know, instilling that kind of thing and bringing that sort of environment around is yeah, is something that I think will certainly serve you well in that endeavor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have a name? I'm interested in a name.
Not yet. This is something that I'm working on.
Okay.
I'm trying to piece things together, and because I'm looking for a name that isn't cliche. I don't want anything that's sort of too linked to jiu-jitsu, because I would also like to have other martial arts there. So I don't want it to be specifically like, oh, the gentle art or things like that, sort of linked to jiu-jitsu too much. But on the same hand, I want something strong, like a one word thing. Like you look at an Atos, and then Atos is so strong because of the meaning to it, right? And then my other, after thinking about this so many times, is Atos strong because you see the competitors and you see how successful the entire team is. If I saw an Atos in like Hounslow, and I was like, and nobody's winning anything, and they're not like this world champion team, then maybe Atos wouldn't be such a cool name. But maybe it just comes along with the branding, to be like Alliance or Checkmat and things like that. There are some names that I don't know whether they're just good names from the start, or whether they become good over time because of the success of the team.
I mean, the answer is probably both, right? Like, you're right.
Yeah.
Like something like TriStar, for instance. Like TriStar
Mm.
is a rubbish name because it's literally 3 stars, right? But you say TriStar, you think of George St. Pierre, you think of Faraz Sahabi, you think of these guys, you think of Ethan Crellenston and Pierre Leclerc
Yeah.
and these kind of guys, and you're like, ooh, TriStar, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Or you think of Henzo Gracie Academy. Like, again, really on the face of it, not an imaginative name at all. Henzo's going to like, that's my academy. It's called My Name Academy. And yet you think of what's come out of Henzo Gracie Academy, and, you know, that brand, that monolith brand instills fear into other people. Like, to me, the name of the gym has to be Galaxy, right? Because especially if you're going to I mean, to me, Galaxy Guard is kind of synonymous with you, right? And I don't mean obviously to take anything away from Sam, but Galaxy, you can branch that out to all the different martial arts you want to include in that school. Galaxy can be determined to be, how vast and wide and unknown jiu-jitsu can be at some points, especially to somebody as a black belt and to somebody as a day one white belt. But also it's nothing to do with jiu-jitsu in the same vein, right? It's nothing to do with jiu-jitsu really. That's my two fantasy. You can you can steal that one.
Who knows? The Galaxy Guard instructional might be coming soon though.
Yeah, and we absolutely have to talk about those. Like, so obviously you've got you've put out the Omoplata Man instructional. For anyone that doesn't have that, in the YouTube and in the iTunes show notes, I will include a link to that instructional. Do you want to talk about a little bit about that, about the instructional you've already put out and ones that you're going to put out?
Yeah, that was super successful. I was really happy with how everyone took that on board, because I've been using instructionals for ages. Like the first time I got my hands on an instructional was like I got a Cabrinha DVD that he was teaching in Portuguese, and there were Japanese subtitles on there, and I was just trying to take everything that I could, drill it when I could, and I was just like always involved in watching instructionals. But when I started watching Ryan Hall, that was when, like, he takes learning to just a whole nother level of teaching the concepts and things. And then again, watching a John Danaher DVD now, where John Danaher seems to break things down even to the most simplest of things.
Yeah.
Even to the point where I'm like, all right, John, let's go to the next topic.
Yeah.
But for, like, if you're a white belt or blue belt watching that, then that is absolutely perfect. So yeah, I took a little bit from both, a lot of inspiration from both of those people to put into action the Omoplata Man DVD to teach like my favorite things. There's a lot of stuff for the I've been using the Omoplata since I was a kid, and it's just something that stuck with me that worked really well for sort of smaller people against bigger guys, just to latch on to one shoulder with your legs. And there's a lot of things that I use that I haven't seen on DVDs or instructionals, so I was quite happy to put that out, and I think a lot of people can learn from it. Also, with it being so successful, not only with me using it in competition, but Laura using it in competition, and Melissa and Samantha, because if you watch any of Laura's fights, it will more than likely just be an omoplata. And that's pretty much how she won her European title this year. Pretty much all the techniques that are on the Omoplata Man instructional have been somewhat downloaded into Laura's brain and are now being used into world championship level tournaments. So I was really happy with that. There loads of people that have sent me messages saying about how great it was, and the catching people in omoplatas in their training, because there are a few people in America that are training now, and they were watching it through the whole pandemic, and now they're able to spar with each other. The coaches are asking them how they've learned this omoplata. So that's nice. Beautiful. It's nice just to have my sort of theories and my techniques spread across the world to all different people. That's lovely. And then we've also got the Bradaconda series coming next, which is all of my head and arm chokes. So the sort of first chapter is all sort of pressure based, setting up the arm triangle, the katakatame, and then the other options I talk about sort of like pinning mechanics versus when you can't pin somebody, and then when you can't pin them, then you start setting up your dash chokes and guillotines and everything else. So that all comes in really nicely. That's coming out at the end of this month. Oh no, it's like a week's time, July 29th. So in 8 days time, we will have the Bradaconda series up on the Grapple Club. And then I'm also in the midst of filming the Galaxy Guard, which is, that one is the one that I'm probably most excited for, because it's going to be a huge DVD full of so many different things. And again, no one's ever seen, because like there's this love for like lapel guards. Yeah. Like, I mean, there's a love-hate relationship with lapel guards. there's about 25% of the jiu-jitsu community that absolutely love it and want to get involved with as much worm guard as possible. And then there is the other part of the world that absolutely hate it because they don't understand how to pass it, and they are really struggling to get through it. Like I always remember, me and Sam used to come to like all different schools in London. We'd come and visit like on a Friday, and like we'd come and visit Tommy in Fight City, or we'd go to New School, or we'd go to Rogers, or we'd go to one of the Gracie Barra gyms. And no matter who, like at least one person would have complained about our lapel guard. So it is a perfect way, one, to sweep and submit, but also to annoy people. So that's going to be fun, because I actually sent one of my fights in to get reviewed by Keenan. He's doing like the Enter the Wormhole.
Enter
with
the
flow
wormhole,
grappling.
yeah.
Yeah. And I would like to see his thoughts on the Galaxy Guard, because it's essentially just a Spider Guard concept-based lapel guard as opposed to a lasso concept-based lapel guard, which is what his Worm Guard is. And try to understand why he doesn't use that, because he's like using everything else, like even lapel passing. He's like experimented that far. So I would like to see why he doesn't. As long as he doesn't like completely come out and be like, nah, it's a load of shit, and then nobody wants to buy my DVD. But we'll see. It would be nice to hear his opinion on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And could you talk a little bit about how those instructionals were actually filmed? Is it Tyrone? Is it Josh? Like how's that? How are those?
Yeah, Tyrone is filming. Tyrone and Melissa. I have a super editing team alongside me.
Yeah.
So we work with the Grapple Club. They're essentially the product is on their website.
The distributor.
It is filmed with Tyrone's cameras, and so I'm using Tyrone in all the demonstrations. So everyone's probably wondering, how is Tyrone filming? Melissa films on the side. So we've got one hard cam, one side profile shot. Melissa has the control over there. And then we're just doing what we can in the given situation. Like, it's going to be impossible to get Josh to come to us all the time.
Yeah.
So if we can do it together, then we all learn how to put this together, which is such an important thing at the same time, is learning all these things, because obviously I love editing videos and making blogs as well. That's a whole nother topic. But so it's nice to put it all together and have a finished product, and know that you've had like everything to do with it, as a part to just being the instructor, and then you say goodbye to the editing team. I'm literally in every single process of picking the music and the fonts and all that sort of stuff. So it's nice.
Yeah, and I think probably the last topic we'll touch on is the vlogs and is sort of the self-promotion, because, you know, obviously you won bountiful accolades during your jiu-jitsu career, and now at Black Belt, you know, you're looking to win a bucket load more, but you are a household name in the UK jiu-jitsu scene, and I think that comes from your own self-promotion as well as just being active on the tournament circuits. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about the vlogs to begin with, and then maybe we can get into, you know, the sort of self-promotion stuff?
Yeah, well, I started watching vlogs actually through like I play Pokemon Go, and there was like a Pokemon Go vlogger, and I was like watching his videos every single day, and I just got like sucked into this daily vlog, and no matter what I did, every night there was a notification on my phone to go to YouTube, and I was like involved in it. I was like, man, I could make a video like this. And then I did the day in the life, and then that went like that's actually got over 50,000 views. So I was like,
amazing.
Yeah. So everybody loved the day in the life, and if I watch that back now, I think, oh God, like what a horrible editing that I did on it, because I feel like it's improved so much over the time. But it pretty much turned into just sort of travel vlogs and techniques that are on my channel. I've done some solo drill sessions, like some quarantine and chill, quarantine and drills sort of things as well. But yeah, I just really enjoy making the videos just for me to watch back.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, if I'm going to make them for me to watch, I may as well put them out for everybody else. But there is a big thing in jiu-jitsu where people don't really promote themselves very well. Their social media isn't the best. And I think it's very different in America. There are a lot of people over there that sort of understand what to do and how to market themselves. But I think in the UK as a whole, there are a lot of really good guys that don't necessarily use the Instagram accounts very well and things. So yeah, I put together the videos. Everybody loved them. I started making more. I really enjoyed making them, and then I loved watching the finishing product myself.
Yeah.
Especially like I've got like 6 or 7 vlogs from Tokyo, which were
Yeah.
like all really fun to make. And then even if like there's some videos that absolutely bomb at like 200 views, but they're just like, for me, they're really funny to watch back. And
Yep.
then it's also nice to read all the comments when everybody's like, oh, I can't wait to watch the next one, or I'm so engaged in this. So yeah, but most recently, that was all I was doing for like the first 2 months of the quarantine, was just editing videos that have been in my library for ages. Like I think I put out a video from the Worlds 2019.
Yes.
Yeah. Worlds 2000. So last year's Worlds, like well and truly like 9 months, 10 months old. Because I got a bit overwhelmed with all of the content that I had, because I was filming everywhere that I was going, and then I was just really struggling with the editing and just getting it done
takes
afterwards.
so long.
Yeah. But then I got nothing to do. I was just in my house, just sat at the bench on my laptop. So I was like, all right, let's edit some videos. And then because I had so much time and there was no sort of boundary to get out quick, because I've already waited 9 months to release it. Doesn't matter if it's another month or so. Then I could really spend some time on learning different things. So going on YouTube and researching how to do this transition or that transition, and then we made quite a nice video out of the World's vlog and like an LA vlog and loads of different things that I popped up.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, what is your YouTube channel?
It's just my name, Bradley Hill.
All right, and I'll put all this crap will go in the show notes, like the Instagram names and YouTube names and all that sort of stuff will all go in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I agree with your point about self-promotion. And to be honest, I actually think on the whole, the US is pretty poor as well. Like if you think about the talent pool in the US, there's so many skilled guys, so many good guys, and yet we don't know that many of them. You know, like the UK is obviously a much smaller skill pool because there's just less people. But again, we only know 15, 20, maybe, 30 guys really, unless you're really in the scene, unless you're really in the promotional, in the invitationals, you're going to tournaments, you're seeing guys competing all the time. You don't really know that many people, right? And I think you're right that if jiu-jitsu was going to grow as a whole, and if it's going to grow into a marketable, monetized sport where the high level athletes are getting paid the worth for the work they put in, then self-promotion is something that really, really needs to grow. I mean, if you look at the UFC, for instance, there's not many people that get the ordained UFC push unless you're Izzy Adesanya or Ronda Rousey or Conor McGregor or these sorts of people. Like Jorge Masvidal is the perfect example of self-promotion. The perfect example, from fighting in Kimbo's backyard at 19 and putting that on YouTube to then, KOing Darren Till in his own backyard, to knocking out Ben Askren in 5 seconds with a flying knee, and that was going viral. Like that's all him. That's all him. The backstage brawl with Leon Edwards, all him. Like it's all self-promotion. And of course, the UFC take that and they run with it. They've got a star on their hands now. But that's all Jorge. And it's similar with jiu-jitsu. I mean, I don't say go and flying knee someone in 5 seconds in a match. Don't do that. Like, that's going to go viral for definitely the wrong reasons. But self-promotion is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. I struggle with the podcast, right? Like the podcast numbers are not anywhere near they were pre-lockdown, and I understand that because people's routine for listening to podcasts is either whilst working, there's not as much work, and whilst commuting, there's definitely not as much commuting. But self-promotion and promoting the podcast is something that I'm trying to look at as well, and I think that you're right that taking the time to promote yourself and find your niche and become your own brand is something that's vastly important.
Yeah, because with so much social media that we have, you're sort of in complete control of your own narrative and deciding how you want to be portrayed and looked at. And it's then up to the sort of these big companies that are running pro shows to whether or not they want to take you on and things like that. But you can always put yourself in the best light by trying to sort of do what you can to put yourself out there and have yourself recognized. So that was one of the
Absolutely.
things that I noticed when I first went to America. There was a lot of people that would come and speak to me or knew who I was, but I had no idea how they knew who I am, because like I go to America like once or twice a year for the tournaments, but I'm not inside that community. And
Mhm.
it must just be through the videos. Like I'll have people comments like from South Africa, and it's like you people are watching the videos from everywhere, and it is a bit crazy. And then there are a lot of people that are like, oh, I watch this vlog and I watch all of your episodes when you put another one out, and that's what I really like about it. But even before I was putting making videos and making vlogs, there are a lot of people that will come and speak to me, but I think Samantha says because I look different to other people.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I do get stared at quite a lot on the streets, so maybe I've just got one of those faces.
I mean, I think I don't know. I don't know really. I mean, I definitely think that it's easy to spot people that aren't from that place when they're in a
Mm.
different place. But in the same vein, if you're going to the States when it's the Worlds for both gi and no gi, like there are so many people on that in that week that are not from there. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like I think that's probably a little bit too critical. Like I think your social media is and your social media reach is really good, and it's not a surprise. I think YouTube is like an enigma in itself. It's a community in itself. Like you can be big on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, but YouTube doesn't give a fuck who you are. They don't even know who you are. But if you
Yeah,
put
yeah.
out good content in YouTube, it will grow organically, I think. And
Hmm.
things like your vlogs that are well filmed and well edited and well put together and well thought out, you know, those things. I mean, of course it helps that you put it out on your Instagram and automatically it'll get a couple of thousand views just from that, but then over time it grows through word of mouth, and it'll grow through the YouTube algorithms and all of this kind of stuff. I think that YouTube is still, although it's it's getting on in its age now, it's still the biggest social media platform, I think, for self promotion.
Yeah, I think it really creates more of a community as well, because they're literally watching 10 minutes of your life or 15 minutes, 20 minutes, however long my vlogs are, as opposed to just scrolling past me on Instagram. Whereas Instagram is to some extent very superficial of these are my perfectly edited photos. And I
Yeah,
know that I've edited the vlog and I'm making nice transitions and things, but there's so much of that goes into the videos that are just raw. And I'm saying what I think and I'm acting how I would act in person, just somebody is recording what I'm doing. Whereas the photos that I'm going to put up on Instagram or the videos of my instructional series are literally the best parts of what I do. Like there are some people that run their Instagram accounts that they'll go to a place, they'll take 3 photos of the sunshine at the beach, but then they've also had like 10 meetings and they've had to run off this way, but then they post up the picture of the beach. And to you, they could have been there their entire day and they've had such a good time with their family at the beach, but really they've been so busy doing all the other things. Whereas I think with YouTube, it's much harder to be superficial, and you really find out who people are, unless you're editing like when you get to sort of Logan Paul level, like when you get to that state. I'm sort of still in the boat of an amateur creator of a one-man band, like a film and editing and all that jazz together. I think obviously when you get to the highest levels of anything, people start to get to everything is edited down to the minute details. But
yeah.
I think for mine, uh, especially, it's pretty raw, pretty
I
organic.
think it's important to keep it like that because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, what you don't want is very similar to Instagram. That Instagram portrays the perfect synopsis of what you determine to be your life or what you want to be portraying your life as, whereas what you're saying, and I agree with you, is that if you're putting your raw self out in a vlog on YouTube for 15, 20, 35 minutes, whatever it is, or like this podcast will go out on YouTube and this is you, this is who you are. When somebody meets you from South Africa, or, you know, they see you across the street in the States and they shout you over, they're not like, that's not the same guy. Like, that's not the same guy. He doesn't smile the same or look the same or have the same voice or speak in the same way. Like that, why have I shoveled couple of hours, 3, 4, 5 hours total, browsing through these vlogs to meet him, and he's a completely different person. Like, and I think being your authentic self and putting your authentic self, whatever that is, so, you know, let's not get into a philosophical debate about what the authentic self is, but you know, putting that out on YouTube is definitely something that I think is important, and I think that you should be commended for that.
Yeah, I think it's also nice for people to get a bit of an inside look as to who I am as a person to some extent, because there's a lot of, I think if you only see me inside a competition or this sort of tournament sort of circuit, there's a lot of people that see the antisocial side that I was talking about earlier, where I'm there to be a competitor, and that is my role for that day. I'm not there to shake hands or to make people feel good. I'm there to win my matches and go home. And at that point, I do get very sort of antisocial to the point where I don't want to speak to anyone. So to the vast majority of people in the British Jiu-Jitsu scene, it's like, what an arsehole. He doesn't even make eye contact, doesn't look at me, doesn't talk. Do you know what I mean? But then if you watch a vlog and you watch 10 minutes of me and I'm actually cracking jokes and you start to understand a little bit more of my humor, then you see, well, it is outside of this realm of trying to, or putting himself into an aspect of competition, that now, it's actually an all right guy. And I think there's a few people that I speak to that once they start to spend time with me, they think, oh, you're a lot nicer than I thought you were. And I'm always baffled by it, or I was baffled by it until I looked at how I behave at tournaments to then understand why people would think such things. But yeah, that's another reason why I quite enjoy it, is because it does give people a bit more of an inside look as to who I am.
Yeah, and I think this platform, right? The idea behind this platform was essentially what you've just said. It's to really get to the bare bones, in as much as, you know, an hour or 2 hours conversation can, of who a person is, right? And for people that may have an opinion of you because they've met you at a tournament or not met you at a tournament, right? Like they've seen you at a tournament and they've seen the way that you are. I implore them to listen to some of this, even if it's just half of it, and you'll see that actually that's not true. And at the end of the day, there's another element to this, and that element is that tournament is your day, right? And equally, your time you don't owe to anyone but yourself. It's a choice to engage with these people, whether it's in tournament day or out of tournament day. Now, your character may be that outside of tournament day, you want to spend time with these people, you want to give time to these people. But at the end of the day, you're right that you're a man that at the end of the day is still young, is still only 25, is still trying to work all this shit out like everyone else is, whether you're 25, 35, 45 or 60. You're still just trying to work this shit out and find out what's going on. And, you know, this competition day, that day at that time is the most important day in your life, because that's the day that you want to get double gold and, you know, you want to submit everyone and everyone's going to get home a platinum. And if you're taken out of that for whatever reason, and that doesn't happen, then there's a bitterness that you have to take home. The person that came and shook your hand and spoke to you for 20 minutes is not going to take that bitterness home that you lost. They'll be like, oh, Bradley lost today, that's cool. But you have to go home on the overground from Crystal Palace, kicking yourself because you weren't in the right mental state to finish those matches. So I think that, you know, there's also something, and this does allude back to the society and the instant gratification. They're like, oh, I know that guy, let me go and speak to him. No, not necessarily. Right? Yeah. Like the instant gratification of seeing somebody, seeing a Bradley, seeing a Jackson Souza, seeing an Igor Toreko, seeing a Ross Nichols at a tournament and being like, oh my God, I know that guy, I'm going to go and speak to him. Maybe he doesn't want to fucking talk to you. Maybe he's there for the same reason you're there, to win some matches. and the way that you handle it is different. And I think that should be widely understood, a lot more widely understood than it is right now. Like I am similar to you in that I'm not similar to you in the sense that I'm antisocial because I'm really nervous. I get really, really nervous before jiu-jitsu tournaments. Back in the day when I was doing kickboxing tournaments, I couldn't give a fuck. I knew I was going to get kicked in the head and I'd accepted it. It's fine. But at a jiu-jitsu tournament, I'm just so ultra nervous and I don't want to speak to anyone because I'm trying to focus on not running out of the room because I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I just think that people, especially at tournament day, should be given a lot wider berth than maybe the stigma that's been attached to you is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's completely different. If you come to my class, by all means, ask me as many questions as possible because then I'm there to teach you. I can answer all your questions. You can shake my hand, all that jazz.
Yeah.
When I'm competing, I very much look at it as two different people.
Yeah.
The coach and or the teacher and the competitor. It's a very different persona.
Yeah, and I think that's echoed in a couple of other high-level guys. Like I spoke to, obviously I've got a bit of a relationship with Ash Williams, and he says to me, like, when I turn up for training days, don't ask me about positions. Don't ask me about, like, you know, when you're rolling with me, roll with me like this is the world's final. Don't roll with me knowing like, oh, Ash is going to pass my guard and submit me. Because he'll say, like, if I touch hands with a guy and he already accepts defeat, I'll be like, thanks very much, and I'll just pick another training partner.
Yeah.
And it's the same with like JT Torres talks about this. He's like, if I step on the mat on my training day and somebody calls me coach, I'm not there to play. I'm not training with them because I'm not a coach for that day. I'm a training partner. Treat me like a training partner. Try and kill me just like you try and kill the next guy because that's what makes me better.
Oh, for sure. There's so many times where I've done, if I do a competition class and I'm running the session, but I'm training the session, and my tolerance levels are so low for everything else because as much as I explain a drill, and if I tell you we're doing 5-minute rounds or we're doing 3-minute rounds of this and then 3-minute rounds of the other, and I get 7 questions asking me to repeat myself while I'm trying to train, that it just kills me because it's just like it takes you out of you trying to train at the same time. Because just look around, see other people train. Go ahead and do what you can. If you didn't know what I said, just train anyway.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that's difficult in that there are, in a way that's almost being a victim of your own success, right? Because as a coach, as a teacher, you are approachable and welcoming. And like you say, if you want to stay back 45 minutes after class and ask me questions about bolos or arm bars or whatever it is, then sure, we can do that. But when it's training time, it's very difficult because you're the same person. You look the same. You're in the same gi. You've got the same belt wrapped around your waist. And when you're telling people the drill, then you're being the same person. You're just Bradley the coach. But then when you touch hands and train, you're like, I'm training now, like train as well. And I think that's something that's difficult for people to delineate against. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. It's tough, but I mean, I've only got to raise my voice a little bit, and then we're.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
Everybody understands what today is.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, I realize now that I've taken nearly 2 hours of your time. So I will offer you any closing thoughts, anything that you wanna put at the end of this.
No, thank you very much. It's flown by. It's good to converse with you.
Yeah.
And I'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
But apart from that, I'm very happy.
What I will say is I'll say, please, before you go, just shout out your social medias and everything else. So where can people find you?
My Instagram page is Omoplata Man.
Obviously.
I was going to change it to Bradaconda, but people keep tagging me in things, and I'll lose the tag. So it could be Bradaconda or it could be Omoplata Man. But if you search Bradley Hill, you'll find me. And then my YouTube channel is just Bradley Hill. You'll find that if you type in my name. My Facebook, Bradley Hill. Aside from that, I don't think there's anything else. We have the instructionals coming out soon. Omoplata Man is already out. I'm going to be releasing a free technique this week. just before we put out the Bradaconda series. And then the Bradaconda series comes out on July 29th. So 8 days until you can start grabbing people's necks.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Well, for me, like, it's a privilege to speak to you. And thank you very much for your time. For anyone else, like, go get the instructionals, learn some omoplatas, learn some head and arm chokes, learn some darcies, learn some guillotines. And when Bradley's gym opens, then go train, meet him, and learn some shit, man. Just learn some shit.
Yeah.
All right, my friend.
Awesome,
Thank you
bro.
very, very much.
Yeah, I
All right.
appreciate it.
Cheers.